This is the March 18th interview with Ruth Hawley. She's the granddaughter of William All Hands Linch. She's been talking about her memories of her aunts and uncles. And in this short interview, she's going to talk about her memory of the youngest uncle, who is Clyde. So, Ruth, what can you tell me about Clyde?
Well, he was all of us kids, like Russell and Howard, and Mary, and all of us. We just adored him because he lavished nice things on us, and he was the Santa Claus of for us kids, and he was always so good to us. And he'd come and take us out up to his house, and we really adored him. And he was just that way with his love for his nephews and nieces, especially Russell and I, because we didn't have any money. And he bought me a pair of boots one time that I had my heart set. It was the fashion for kids to be wearing these lace-up boots, like in the well, we had ice and snow and severe weather, and I had my heart, and I knew I couldn't have it because we didn't have money for it. It was like asking for the moon. Guess what? He bought Marion and I both the boots, because anything I wanted, Marion wanted, and she got it and I didn't. Well, that's all right. But he went on. He studied to be a dentist, and then when Ray, he bought up a lot of land, and he had these insurance companies and hail insurance companies, and he had bought up around Val. He had I believe he had the town bar, and I know there was several others that he just had that. Then when the crash came, he he had those holdings, but no money coming in because no one had any money, and it was. But he talked to Brother Clyde. He got his education being a dentist, and then he went in business with Ray when he decided he didn't want to be a dentist any longer. Well, then there was a big mix-up over that era. But he was a rancher. Had this beautiful. They had a nice home out on this ranch out of Big Springs, Nebraska, and we were there many times. And Beulah, he was married to a grass widow woman. Her name was Beulah Clyde. Her mother's name was Clyde. I guess that was, but she was the ex-wife of that famous ball player.
So Clyde's wife was
Yeah,
Beulah.
yeah, she was, and she traveled with this in the early day. I can't think of his name. This very, very famous top ball player of all times.
Uh-huh.
And she was married to his brother. And so she had, she was a college lady, and she ended up living on that ranch in the summer times. And then she'd take off and go to California. They had one son, one child. His name was Mickey. They called him Mickey. That's what his nickname of his father. Mickey was Uncle Mickey, and he was their pride and joy. This
Their child. Uh-huh.
Well, she drug him out of school all those years that he should have been in. Even if they'd have put him in the Catholic school up at Sydney, where I went, and kept him in school places that, she whirled him out of school, and then half the year was spent in California. Well, it ended up that Mickey didn't have a proper foundation of an education, and but he did go to a boys' academy.
Uh-huh.
And his father paid for his friend to go with him to Mickey Lentz. His name was Mickey too. So And Clyde paid for both boys to go off to this boarding school there in the East Coast. Well, the other boy was made it. Mickey, I don't think he went a couple of years maybe. This boarding school. But outside of that, then he went into being a rancher himself up there, where he ended up I can't think now, but it was where his father had invested in land up there. Had a great deal. And then Clyde died suddenly, and he didn't have his will straightened out. And I don't know exactly the ins and outs, but it created terrible hardship getting things.
How old was he when he died?
Oh, I suppose 65.
Okay.
That was about, they all died in their mid-60s. They didn't live that long, any of them. But Mickey stayed on as a rancher.
Where was the ranch?
Well, it was in ranch country. I can't think offhand, but it was in another state. And I never really heard who he married and had a family, but sort of the family just, I never heard much about Mickey. I was around him when he was little. He was a cute little guy, and Beulah didn't like living on that ranch in Big Springs. She had her own apartment in the back end of the house, and she stayed off by herself. They had a cook that cooked for the crew of men that worked for Clyde. She had no part in any of that. She stayed in the back there with her. She had her own apartment. Then she'd take off and go to California. We'd take Mickey and her mother with her, Mrs. Clyde. And she was most upset over the way her life turned out. She'd had a glamorous life. And but anyway, they didn't divorce or anything, and that's where Mickey to this. I guess he passed on recently.
Okay.
I heard that Mickey had passed on, and so I offhand I should have had more time to think where it was at. And Clyde's estate was tied up because he didn't have his will in order.
Well, that's
why, God knows, there was
a
no
real
reason
pity.
for it.
Well, yeah, that's
There was
a
no
real
reason
pity.
for it.
Do you have any personal memories of Clyde? Well, he bought you the boots.
Yeah, he bought the boots, and he was always doing nice things for us kids. And he used to come up, him and Uncle Harry come up, because they both lived in Big Springs. Harry had his dental business in that town, and Clyde had this big holding of enormous big lot of land. That he had crews of people working for him every year. The same people would come back every year to help with the crops. And but I can't remember. It was the height of the Depression, and we landed there at Clyde's to get out of Lincoln because we couldn't pay $15 a month rent. My father he had the money off of a car we sold. We ended it broke there. And then he got money from the government through a friend of his in Sydney to get seed, and that's when Franklin Roosevelt helped the people stay on the. So we ended up back at, we had a ranch in Sydney. We owed $3,200, less what I paid for one of my rings. That was all we owed on over a section of land that was wheat land, and it was ideally located close to a little creek and good highways into town. And I went to the 8th grade there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's all we have to say about Clyde Linch then.
About it.
So we'll stop this interview right here, and we'll move on. If we think of something, we'll come back.